Secret Masochist. Welcome back to another installment of Aw/No Sleep. Today, I have one from a new author, the Darth Brandy Buck. Title: I keep having nightmares, and I'm not sure I woke up yet. Like always, please like and subscribe. If you know anybody that's interested in these types of stories, please share with them. Bring them over to the dark side. Let's get into it. Has anyone ever heard of those weird lightning dreams that hit you in the 5 minutes between pressing the snooze button on your alarm and it going off? Well, I get those pretty regularly, and most of the time, they're pretty strange. This morning my wife's alarm went off at 5:15 so she could go to the gym before work. I'm not typically a morning person, so I was planning to go after work myself. Anyway, I was awake and we talked while she got ready before we said our morning prayers and I sent her off. I didn't feel like it would be worth going back to sleep, so I decided to just sit in bed and scroll on my phone until my alarm went off at 6:15. About 30 minutes after my wife had left, my phone rang. It was the police. My wife had been in a car accident on the way to the gym, and she was dead. I jumped out of bed and ran for the front door. Only when I opened it, I was suddenly back in bed again. It was a dream, and I had, in fact, fallen asleep again. As I was still coming back to reality, I could hear my wife pulling into the driveway, so I went to open the front door to meet her. When she came in, she was talking to someone on the phone and looked pretty distraught. I could hear what the other person was saying, but my wife's responses indicated that whatever was going on wasn't good. "What do you mean?" "Okay, well, what did she say?" "So then what's gonna happen?" When she hung up, my wife let out a big sigh. "Everything okay?" I asked. "No, apparently something happened at my parents' church and now there's a huge fallout." "Are we talking like a scandal or something?" "I don't know, but apparently word is getting out and it's probably gonna make the news. So my mom was worried that it was gonna make everyone there look bad." "Well, can we do anything to help?" Before she could answer, I felt a sudden pressure on my thigh and I suddenly snapped awake to find myself back in bed. My cat had squeezed through the crack in the door to the hallway and was now loafing on top of me. I shook my body and she skittered off. I hear the front door open, but I was hesitant to get out of bed this time. After a few seconds, my wife stormed into the bedroom, absolutely covered in white paint. Holy cow, what happened?" I asked. "Well, you know how they're building that gate on the street into the neighborhood?" "Yeah, of course. Our entire HOA had recently pulled together for that project. As HOAs go, it wasn't insane like some of the stories you hear. Really, all it was good for was street maintenance or paying to clear a fallen tree after a storm. There was a small park at the back of the neighborhood that was meant to be for residents only, but people who weren't came in all the time. There had been a few instances where people had a full-on cookout and left the entire place a mess. Since it was technically a private park, us residents were the ones that had to clean it all up. I personally didn't care either way, but I certainly wasn't a fan of people who came flying off the main road into the neighborhood. And the gate would put a stop to that particular problem too. "Well, I was coming back from the gym," my wife continued as she peeled off her formerly black Lululemons that now looked like a dairy cow hide. "And when I turned into the neighborhood, there were all these hooligans standing in the street where they're building the gate, like they were protesting, because God forbid they go to a different park." "Okay." Real supportive, I know. "Well, I rolled down the window to ask them to move out of the way so I could come home, and they threw a cup of paint at me, like I'm the problem." As she climbed into the shower, my next thought was what the inside of the car looked like. It felt insensitive to ask, but thankfully I didn't have to, because I heard the doorbell ring. I woke up in bed yet again, and more annoyed than confused. The doorbell rang a second time, but I noticed that the chime didn't sound like it normally did. We have one of those smart camera doorbells with the digital chime plugged into the wall, but this sounded more like a traditional bell. Stranger still, it sounded like the ring was coming from outside in the front yard more than it did in the house. Naturally, I grabbed the pistol that I kept on my bedside before heading to the front door to investigate. Unfortunately, the cat had beat me there. She had recently figured out how to open lever-style doorknobs, and wouldn't you know, that's the kind we have on our front door. Standing just beyond the threshold were two elderly women, dressed up like they were going to an Easter Sunday service. One was holding a stack of flyers, and the other carried 2 small hay bales like the ones that you buy at the craft store. "Whatever it is, I'm not interested," I said and held the gun at my side. They didn't seem to notice it, or they did and just didn't care. "Oh, we don't mean to bother," the lady on the right said through a toothy smile. "We just want to ask a couple quick questions." "No thanks," I said as I walked forward to shut the door. "You need to leave." "Come on now, dear," the lady on the left began. "It'll be no trouble at all." For whatever reason, I paused, holding the door about halfway open. "You have 10 seconds, I said flatly. "Well, we're just going through the neighborhood." "Don't care." I slammed the door shut and turned the deadbolt. I reached for my phone to call my wife, but I realized I had left it in the bedroom, so I went to grab it and dialed her number while returning to the entryway. When I got to the front door, I looked out of the fanlight window to see if I could spot the 2 old ladies, only to find my entire front patio absolutely covered in fall decor. I'm talking dried corn stalks, pumpkins, decorative gourds, the works. And of course, there were several of the small craft store hay bales scattered about too. This disturbed me for a number of reasons. First was that the 2 women were nowhere to be seen. Second was that the patio had, up until now, been devoid of any decorations aside from the wicker table set and a few dried leaves that blew in from the yard. Third of all, it was the middle of March. My phone rang, and I stirred from my slumber yet again, back in bed. It was my wife, probably calling to see if I was up and getting ready. So this one's like bonkers Groundhog Day. Not necessarily repeating, but he's getting transported back to his bed every time he wakes up, technically. Intriguing. "Hello?" I said warily. "Hey, I'm almost home," I heard my wife say. "Can you come help me?" I figured she had stopped at the grocery store across from the gym and needed help bringing in the bags. That wasn't out of the ordinary, but I still wasn't going to take any chances at this point. So I grabbed my gun for real this time and tucked it into my waistband before heading for the door. Just as I walked outside, I saw my wife's car coming down the street. As she pulled into the driveway, I heard a commotion over the rise in the road that she had just come over herself, and I looked in time to see a horde of children come scrambling down the road towards our house. They all looked to be between the ages of 5 and 8, and every one of them wore dirty, torn clothes that were covered in grime and filth. Before my wife could get out of the car, about 20 of them surrounded her car while the rest began romping around in the front yard, wrestling with each other, throwing rocks back and forth, and so on. The children around the car were equally as rambunctious, but didn't seem to have any hostile intent or desire to actually get inside the car. They were simply blocking my wife from getting out. I had the fleeting thought to start popping off rounds at the children, but a brief return to reason, or perhaps lapse of reason, led me to put the safety back on. Besides, what were 8 bullets going to do against 50 feral children? I should have grabbed the AR instead. I rushed outside and began shooing the kids off. A few of them scurried away into the empty lot next to our house. As I reached the car and grabbed the handle to the door, I heard a loud rumbling of a massive vehicle coming down the road. Sure enough, a big red dually rumbled over the hill and pulled into the driveway. It had an excessive lift kit and LED strips covering nearly the entire undercage as well as the rims. You know, a bro-dozer. A man looking like he just came from a Limp Bizkit concert stepped, more like fell, out of the driver's side door and clambered over to me. "Dude, I'm so sorry," he said. "Is this all you?" I asked, motioning to the swarm of rugrats in my front yard. "It's so hard to keep track of them sometimes, you know." "I don't care," I shot back. "You need to get them off my property." "You got it, bro." He started herding up the children. I opened the car door for my wife and helped her out. "Get inside," I said. She went into the house without a word. A long white van pulled up on the street in front of my house, and the man started ushering the children inside. I turned on my gun's flashlight and began walking around my house to check for any stragglers. The left side was clear, and so was the backyard. But as I came around to the right side of the house that faces the empty lot, I heard a rustling in the brush. I moved my light in the direction of the noise and saw 2 of the kids ducking out from behind a fallen tree. "You can't be here," I shouted sternly. They scurried off towards the van, and as they did, I noticed that they both had a mass of thick vines growing across their back and wrapping around their limbs. Once the van drove off and the truck pulled out of the driveway, I went back inside and locked the door. My wife was standing there in the driveway, waiting for me. "Did that really just happen?" I asked. "Are you serious? Why would you even ask that?" she replied. "Well, I know this sounds crazy, but I kept on waking up this morning from different dreams that have gotten progressively weirder." "What do you mean?" "Well, first I thought you died in a car accident on your way home. Then there was apparently a huge scandal at your mom's church. Then you had a bucket of paint dumped on you by some protesters. And the last one, these two old ladies basically broke in to sell me Hobby Lobby hay bales, and I almost shot them." She smirked. "Really?" "And then," I continued, "I wake up to find our yard infested with dozens of feral children." My wife's face suddenly looked puzzled. "What are you talking about?" she asked with confusion. "Really? Did you not just see 50 ratty kids outside?" "Babe, I didn't see any kids." "Are you serious right now?" "Those weren't kids outside. To me, they all look like demons." A pounding on the front door woke me up again, and I could hear the voice of my wife calling out for me to come open it and let her in. I grabbed my phone to check the time, and it hadn't been long enough for her to go to the gym and come back yet. Besides, she would have had the car keys, meaning she would have a house key as well. I reached for the gun yet again when I felt my phone buzzing in the other hand. It was a text message from my wife. "I'm on my way home." That's a crazy one. That's a story inside of a story inside of a story. I dig it. It was pretty cool. Keeps you thinking. After like the second or third time, you're like, yeah, he's going to be in a dream again. He's never going to wake up out of that dream though. So I wonder what's going to happen next. If you get a chance, please go over to the Dark Brandy Bucks Reddit page and give them a like there. Let them know what you think about the story. Appreciate each and every one of you coming here every day and watching the videos. I'm the Migru Masochis. Farewell. That's a story inside of a story inside of a story.